It's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're caught in one of the most frustrating paradoxes in modern life. You've had a bruisingly long day, your arms are heavy, your brain feels like complete mush. By all accounts, you'd think that you pass out almost straight away as soon as your head hits the pillow. But that's not quite the case. Staring at the shadows of the ceiling, hyper aware of the clock, your mind is racing. Somehow you are both exhausted and completely awake. Tired, but wired. But why is that the case? For the longest time, we've thought of sleep as just topping up a battery. You work hard, you sleep, the battery fills back up again, and you're ready to go the next day. But the reality and the physiology is way more interesting than that. But first, a little bit of history. Back in the 1980s, sleep scientists formalized a concept that they called the two-process model of sleep regulation. Scientists are not the best with marketing names, fair play. So don't let that weird sounding name put you off. It basically means that your alertness and therefore your sleep isn't handled by just one clock. Instead, it's a continuous biological tug of war between two forces. On one side, you've got your body's sleep debt that you build up through the day, and on the other, we've got the 24-hour internal clock. And when they function together or work together, they seamlessly help you coast into nice restorative sleep. But when they're at odds with each other, that's when things start to break down. And that's probably why you're watching this video. In this video, we're going to go through or open up the hood as to what's happening with the machinery underneath and why these clocks can be at odds with one another. We'll also look at why modern life is pushing this masterpiece of evolution to its very, very limits. I want to start us off with something called Process S, or the homeostatic sleep drive. To help with this, imagine your brain as like a bit of a busy London Underground station. The minute you wake up in the morning, the gates or the turnstiles open and people start flooding into the station. In your brain, these passengers or these people are a chemical called adenosine. Adenosine is basically the price you pay simply for being awake. And as your brain cells help you think, move, speak, adenosine is produced. The longer you're awake, the harder and longer your brain has worked, and therefore the more adenosine you build up. Basically, your station just gets more and more crowded. And this build up is what you feel as that heavy weight of tiredness building up through the day. Now, under normal circumstances, for that station to work, the passengers have to go through those turnstiles and tap through. And that tapping through triggers a very specific response. Going through the first set of barriers to get physically into the station triggers almost like a biological brake pedal. As adenosine passes through there, it tells your brain to start quietening down the levels of alertness. And as they pass through the second set of turnstiles to get to their train, it actually tells your brain to biologically start promoting sleepy hormones. It turns on a tiny cluster of cells called the VLPO, which is essentially kind of like your brain's master sleep switch. Not to be confused with your master sleep clock, that we will get to, I promise. When this switch flips on, calming hormones and calming neurotransmitters flood, which promotes sleepiness. And as you finally get into bed at night and you close your eyes, the clean-up train arrives. In the world of sleep, we would see this as being called non-rapid eye movement sleep or slow wave sleep. It's an incredibly rhythmic electronic wave pattern that we see with an EEG. And then, whilst you sleep, those passengers, that adenosine, gets taken away by the train. And as they do, the night shift crew arrives to clear out any litter or waste that some of those passengers might have left behind. And some of that litter you might have heard of is called beta amyloid, which are like little plaques that can develop in the brain and increase risk of things like Alzheimer's in the future. As long as we sleep or get enough good sleep quality and opportunity, all of that gets cleared away, ready for a nice clean station the next day. Now, some people think that they can overcome this particular process with a quick cup of coffee, but that's not quite the case. Let's see what's actually happening. Caffeine doesn't actually clear the station. It's not like someone that you've got to go down to the platform and told everyone that they need to leave. It doesn't work like that. Caffeine is more like that incredibly annoying person that stands at the turnstile and just doesn't let you through whilst they fumble to try and get their Oyster card. It basically completely blocks everybody else, all that adenosine, from getting through, which for somebody that might be viewing the CCTV of the platform looks as though there aren't many passengers on the platform. But when that caffeine wears off, or when it finally manages to clear the turnstile, all of a sudden, all of those passengers behind will flood into the station. And that is your classic caffeine crash. So that's process S, adenosine and sleep debt. What about process C? Well, if sleep debt is the crowd on the platform, process C is more like the train's timetable. Process C is your circadian rhythm. It's a built-in internal clock that runs on a 24-hour cycle, or 24.17 if you go on the average. It runs entirely separately from how long you've actually been awake. If I had locked you in a pitch black room or a cave, which has been done, we would see that that process continues in exactly the same way throughout. And whereas before I talked about the master sleep switch, well, now we're going to talk about the master sleep clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, otherwise known as the SCN. It's a cluster of around about 20,000 cells that sits pretty much behind your eyes, and it manages pretty much every 24-hour rhythm that your body has, all the way from digestion to temperature. But how does a tiny group of around about 20,000 cells keep time? Well, inside every single SCN cell, there are two main proteins that we think of, and they pretty much start an assembly line of those two proteins creating two more proteins. As these secondary proteins build up through the day, eventually they march back to the original two and tell them to stop production. And overnight, these proteins just are naturally cleared away when you're asleep. Once they're gone, the block is lifted and the whole process starts again. And this loop takes almost exactly 24 hours to do. For years, scientists thought that these proteins worked perfectly in step with one another, but real-time imaging has shown that it's a little bit more nuanced than that and way more fluid. Some proteins peak quite early and move on quite fast, whereas others are incredibly slow and stable and have a lot more strength to them to stop the process. It's a beautifully complex biological watch. And as I mentioned, because it's roughly 24.17 hours, left alone, it actually drifts over time. Remember I said about the pitch black dark or the cave studies? Well, what we would find is that that person sleeps later and later and later and later. So what we need is a little bit of an external cue to say, right, okay, well now is the start of the day. And the Germans refer to that as a Zeitgeber or time giver. And the ultimate Zeitgeber is light, particularly morning light. Special light sensitive cells at the back of the retina detect particularly blue light and tell your SCN it's time to start that process. So we have the crowded platform and we have the strict timetable that the train needs to run to. How do they work together? The researchers found that your internal clock doesn't directly make you tired. Instead, it's more like it's constantly moving an upper and lower boundary. You can think of this as almost like guardrails for your consciousness. Whilst you're awake, your sleep debt climbs higher and higher and higher. Meanwhile, your internal clock keeps the guardrail nice and high, so that sleep debt can't quite reach up there and initiate sleep at any particular time. But late in the evening, that guardrail starts coming down a little bit, and all of a sudden our sleep pressure is higher. So your sleep debt goes crashing through that ceiling and you can initiate sleep. This boundary is what we essentially call a flip-flop switch. Your sleep center and your wake center are acting as a bit of a biological seesaw. They are mutually inhibitory, which is just a nice way of saying as one goes up, the other one must go down. It's a beautiful system that means that you are either awake or asleep and very rarely sitting in that grey, hazy zone. But this is where the system is highly vulnerable. Those guardrails aren't set in stone. They can be moved. If you introduce some of modern life's stresses, such as a hard day at work, anxiety, looking at blue light on your phone, you can actually override the system. Those stress triggers essentially tell your brain to keep promoting those wakeful hormones, which, as we know, physically blocks your sleep. What you're doing is essentially pushing or manually adjusting that guardrail up so that sleep debt can't crash through that ceiling. So even though you've worked really, really hard and you've been awake for many, many hours, because you're not reaching that guardrail, it means you're not going to initiate sleep particularly easily. This is where we're trapped. This is where we are tired but wired, which is a real common occurrence or symptom of insomnia. But as much as we love the clean textbook definitions, biological reality is often quite different. The two-process model is an incredibly useful tool for understanding our biology, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's perfect. A lot of what we know tends to come from studies on mice or fruit flies, which can't always be likened to human sleep. For instance, mice are nocturnal and they will have multiple bouts of sleep, whereas we, as humans, are awake during the day and we have one consolidated period of sleep. So human data doesn't show that sleep debt works like a bank account. If you pull an all-nighter and you're awake for 8 hours, your brain doesn't actually need 8 hours worth of sleep to recover. It doesn't pay back the time. What it does is it prioritizes depth. It basically increases the intensity of those brain waves to make sure that you're clearing off those waste products. And we also have to accept that these guardrails shift naturally over the course of someone's life, and particularly for women, can shift over the course of the month. Babies don't even have an internal clock built in at the point of birth. They just sleep in chaotic bursts until their bodies start naturally producing some of those sleep hormones. Teenagers go through a biological delay. Their guardrails actually don't come down until much later, which unfortunately, particularly with things like school times and working hours, they're a little bit lost at sea. But as we age through the years of life, what we find is that our clock starts moving earlier. And that's because we lose some of those naturally occurring clock cells. Hell, even seasons play a role in when we get production of things like melatonin. So this is why I find it so important that people don't think that sleep is some perfect machine that you can just achieve by knowing the science. So why should you care about anything that I'm saying? Well, because modern society is basically running this huge biological experiment at the moment. We have quite deliberately, in most cases, completely broken the link between our internal clock and our natural sleep pressure. Shift work, international travel, daily stress. We are routinely forcing ourselves to sleep when we shouldn't and stay awake when we shouldn't be. The good news behind it though is that understanding these systems has helped sleep medicine and sleep science aid people in improving their sleep quite dramatically. For those with things like insomnia, cognitive behavioural therapy for insomnia uses the knowledge of those two systems to improve someone's opportunity for sleep. But if you're not someone necessarily suffering from insomnia, but perhaps would just like a few tips here or there, or wonder how you can run in line with these two systems, I've got some for you. First, we want to anchor your clock. And by that, I mean getting that morning light, that Zeitgeber that we talked about. Ideally, you'll do this within an hour of waking up, but I appreciate it's not necessarily possible for everyone to get outside. So even if you're sat next to a window or with sunlight coming in, that's just as good. Secondly, protect your guardrails. You want to drop those high stress activities that you might be doing, which might include things like emails or flicking or doom scrolling through your phone. Now, I appreciate that some people's lives require them to do this, so it might be that you engage in other activities that are sleep promoting or stress reducing that would also bring those guardrails down for you. And finally, respect your sleep debt. Those passengers, or your brain, will only allow so many passengers to build up on that station before it initiates sleep itself and takes control. Your sleep isn't just this blank void. It's a carefully balanced chemical symphony that we need to pay attention to. Stop fighting the timetable, let your platform clear, and let the cleanup crew do their job. Thanks for watching. Sleep well.